While these two were talking with each other and asking each other other questions, Jesus drew near and began to journey alongside them. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and wherever you are. We are glad you're with us. In this morning's gospel, we hear the story of two disciples traveling along the road to the town of Emmaus. As they are walking and talking about Jesus' death, Jesus comes alongside and walks with them, though they do not know it is him. As I think about this story, I am drawn to Jesus' actions. What does it mean to come alongside someone? And why does Jesus do it here? As some of you may know, I have spent quite a bit of time serving as a chaplain in local hospitals. And in that role, I have often been called upon to come alongside people in their worst and most painful moments. One such instance I remember vividly involved a young woman who lost her mother unexpectedly. One night, I was paged to the emergency department because there was a patient who had just arrived and things weren't looking good. So I rushed to the room. When I arrived, the room was jammed with nurses and doctors trying to save a life. The floor was littered in wrappers, tubes, and wires. There was a good bit of blood dripping off of the table and onto the floor. Orders were being communicated. A sea of hands took turns with compressions and desperate attempts to save the patient's life. And then, silence. Time of death. And that mass of people parted to reveal a middle-aged woman lying lifeless on the table. One of the nurses caught sight of me and informed me that the woman's family was waiting in the family room. They didn't know what had happened. It was my job to break that news to the family. So I grabbed the lead doctor, and together we walked down a corridor to the ER doors. The doors opened. We stepped out into the hallway and turned left toward the family room. A young woman was standing just outside of the family room. And when we turned that corner, her eyes saw us. A priest and a doctor walking towards her. She instantly knew what had happened. She let forth a blood-curdling scream and crumpled to the floor in the middle of the hallway. The doctor continued past her to inform the rest of the extended family of what had happened. But I walked up to that woman on the floor, came alongside her, and sat down next to her. I whispered, "I'm so sorry." She grabbed onto me tightly, and I held her as she sobbed and screamed, "No, no," over and over again. As we sat there, I remember nurses, visitors, and other employees passing by us, the world continuing on as normal, even though this woman's world had just been shattered. After what seemed like forever, she looked up at me and asked me, "Can I see my mom?" For that was the woman who had died. We stood up together, and I walked alongside her, back down those hallways, through those ER doors, and into the room where that middle-aged woman was still lying. I stood there with her as she said her goodbyes and embraced her mother one last time. She then told me story after story of her mother, how she and her husband were high school sweethearts, how she always went out of her way to help others, and how she made the best pecan pie. We sat and talked together and grieved together the loss of her mother. And then we prayed together for the repose of her mother's soul. As she left that evening, she turned, gave me a hug, and thanked me for being there with her and for offering her hope in the disorientation of the death of her mom. She said even though it would be hard, her faith was strong, and she knew that God was with her and with her mother. And then she walked through the ER doors. I probably will never see her again. But such is the chaplain's call, to walk alongside someone in their darkest hour, to provide a calming presence, and to nurture hope. We may only walk alongside someone for minutes, but they are possibly the most difficult and meaningful minutes of their life. Now, this story of coming alongside this young woman came to my mind this week as I listened to Luke's words of Jesus coming alongside the two disciples walking to Emmaus. Where the two disciples are walking together, asking questions about how Jesus could have died and trying to comfort themselves in some of the darkest hours of their lives. One can imagine their disbelief at the situation, their shouts of "No, no," quite like that young woman on the hospital floor. And then Jesus, the ultimate chaplain, comes alongside them to join them on their journey for a little while, to hear their stories and to allow a space for them to process all that is happening. Jesus comes not to tell them the answers outright, but to provide that calming presence to help them find the answers within themselves. As Jesus talks with them, the disciples feel a burning within their hearts, a kindling of the flame of hope, of inspiration. And then Jesus reveals himself to them, dispelling the remaining clouds of confusion and shades of sorrow that had blinded those disciples, making the hope of the resurrection realized. And then Jesus vanishes. Like a chaplain, Jesus had walked alongside those disciples in their darkest hour, had calmed their sorrows, and had rekindled a new hope within them. Their interaction was so very brief, but its impression has echoed through centuries of human history. So the lesson I take away from this story of the road to Emmaus is this: the power of coming alongside someone in need is transformational. simply being present with someone, simply making them feel seen, giving them a kind ear, a shoulder to cry upon, a hand to lift them up, can be the spark that drags them from the darkness and into the light, that rekindles a fire of hope in their hearts. Now, as I was writing this sermon this week, a song came on the radio. Some might say it was a moment of the Spirit acting in my life. Some 56 years ago, the duo Simon and Garfunkel wrote this song, one of their most famous songs, Bridge Over Troubled Water. The lyrics showcase this power of coming alongside someone and how being present for them can be the bridge from despair to hope. When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I will dry them all. I'm on your side. Oh, when times get rough and friends just can't be found, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. Friends, as we go forth from this place, my question for us is simple. How can you come alongside someone today and be a bridge to the hope for a better day? Amen.